Fellas, obviously the UFC is a very diverse company. A lot of countries, a lot of fighters coming from different countries in the UFC. So I've decided to go through a bunch of different countries in the UFC. And I've gone for the major countries, the ones that tend to have multiple fighters. Not just a country that has like one or two fighters. But I've gone through countries in the UFC and picked out the best and the worst ranked fighter to come from this country. Now, obviously, when I say worst ranked fighter, I'm not necessarily saying they're bad fighters. In some cases, they are just the worst of a good bunch, and then in some cases, they aren't even that good and they're barely making the rankings. And we're going to be going through every major country, picking out the best and the worst fighter to come from that country that is actually ranked. And yeah, we'll start off with Russia. Now, for Russia's best, it's got to be Islam Makhachev, no questions needed. I mean, he's one of the best in the world, never mind just being Russia. I mean, I would put him as pound for pound number one right now. What he's achieved in the UFC already, 26-1. Beat Oliveira when Oliveira was the best lightweight in the world, slaying everyone. Beat Volkanovski twice when Volkanovski was pound for pound number one. Beat Dustin Poirier, had flawless come-ups to the title when he fought Hooker and Green. He just looks unstoppable, does Islam Makhachev. He looks like the most unbeatable fighter in the UFC right now. Like, unless he goes up to 170 and has a close fight with Leon and loses that, I just don't see anyone beating Islam Makhachev. He's probably the best, or at least one of the best wrestlers and grapplers in the UFC. His striking has improved massively, and without a doubt, he's still the champion as well. Without a doubt, he's definitely the best fighter to come from Russia right now, and Russia's a stacked country as well. A ton of fighters to come from Russia, but Makhachev has to be the best ranked fighter. And then the worst, I've gone with Azamat Murzakanov. Now, this dude isn't necessarily trash. I know his build kind of makes him look like a fat heavyweight, but he's in the light heavyweight division, 13-0, undefeated. He just hasn't really beaten anyone good. He's best when he's Dustin Jacoby, the dude that just got finished by Dominic Gracie in 2024. Azamat's got really good boxing. His defense isn't that great, and he does look like a decent prospect in the light heavyweight division. He's going to be taking on Alonzo Menifield soon, and that's definitely his biggest test yet. But he's got to be the worst ranked fighter as of right now. I mean, every other Russian that is ranked has at least proved himself to become ranked, or at least has a bright future. And with Murzakanov, again, he's undefeated. He's not shown us that he's a bad fighter necessarily. I just don't think he's going to have an extremely bright future, like a lot of these other Russian prospects do. So I'm going to have to put Azamat Murzakanov as the worst ranked Russian, but he's definitely not a bad fighter. But then you also got to take into consideration he's in the light heavyweight division, which isn't the most stacked division. So the best fighter to come from Russia, Makhachev, and the worst, Azamat Murzakanov. But obviously, we're going to have to see how Murzakanov performs when he faces Alonzo Menifield. And then we'll go to the UK, and I've just kind of collectively used UK rather than just England. But for the best fighter to come from the UK, I've gone with Leon Edwards. Pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. I mean, there's two English champions right now, or British champions, him and Aspinall. Aspinall hasn't defended the belt yet. Leon beat pound for pound number one Usman with a head kick and then took him to a decision. He beat Colby Covington when he was forced to fight Covington. And even though he might not be this flashy finisher, he's just super well-rounded. Again, one of these fighters that doesn't really have a weakness in the octagon, apart from maybe, pressure. When it comes to martial arts, he's mastered everything. He's a great wrestler, really good striker, just picks people apart. He's still the champion. 22-3. I mean, there's no other British guy right now that's doing that. Aspinall has great potential. I mean, he's definitely the second best right now, but Leon's achieved more as of right now than Tom Aspinall, and he's in a much more competitive division than Aspinall in the welterweight division. So for the UK, I'm putting Leon Edwards as the best. And then the worst, similar to Azamat Murzakanov, I've gone with Lerone Murphy. Another undefeated fighter. Now, the thing about Lerone Murphy, again, it's not that he's necessarily a bad fighter. He just hasn't proven himself. He's 13-0. And even though he's had a few controversial fights throughout his career, a lot of fights that maybe shouldn't have gone his way, he has just beaten Edson Barboza in a Fight Night main event. And he did it pretty comfortably as well. He's a really good prospect in the featherweight division. Really good wrestler. He's one of the few fighters that kind of go against the whole Brits can't wrestle narrative. His striking's really good as well. He's just a really clean fighter. Super technical. Might not be the most interesting to watch, but I'd say as of right now, he's probably the worst ranked fighter. I mean, we've got a couple of ranked British fighters, obviously Arnold Allen as well, like I said, Tom Aspinall, but Lerone Murphy, he's best when he's Barboza in a decision. He hasn't really done anything else, so I'm going to have to put him as the worst ranked fighter from the UK right now, but that could change. Him and Arnold Allen in that same division, if he's able to get ranked above Arnold Allen, that might change things. But yeah, as of right now, it's Lerone Murphy. Then we go to France. The best Frenchman is Cyril Gane, and the worst is Benoit Saint-Denis. Another one that these guys aren't too far apart. I mean, you got to look at Benoit Saint-Denis. He's in the most competitive division in the UFC, in the lightweight division, and then Cyril Gane's at heavyweight. So Cyril Gane, he's basically been able to beat up every single heavyweight apart from the best, Jones and Ngannou, obviously the best at the time. He beat Volkov, he beat Spivak, he beat Rosenstruik, he beat Lewis, he beat Tuivasa. He's put together a really good resume. And he's overall one of the best in the heavyweight division. Best of a bad bunch, I understand. I think he's ranked number 2 in the heavyweight division as well. So, yeah, Cyril Gane, I'd say he's definitely the best Frenchman right now, just because, I mean, if he wins another fight, he's probably going to get a title shot, let's be honest. And then for Benoit Saint-Denis, I'd put him as the worst ranked Frenchman. Not a terrible fighter. Was once a massive prospect in the UFC, just got fraud-checked by Dustin Poirier, and he lost his debut to Oleksiy dos Santos. But he's also got some really good wins. Thiago Moises, Bodfam, Frivola, 13-2, and I think he's matched against Renato Moicano. If he can beat Moicano and put together a few good wins in the lightweight division, because he's in a much more competitive division than Cyril Gane, I might have to put him above Cyril Gane. But for right now, the best is Cyril Gane, the worst is Benoit Saint-Denis, and then the USA, United States. Now, considering that like 90% of the roster comes from USA, it's kind of hard finding the worst American fighter, but for the best, I've got to go John Jones. Pound for pound, I think he's pound for pound number 3 right now, and even though you might not agree with him or whatever, you might not agree with the fact that he's ducking Aspinall and this and that, he is the best fighter as of right now from the UFC. I mean, 27-1, he's got a ton of good wins. I don't need to read out every single one of his wins, but he came up to the heavyweight division after a few years off, demolished Cyril Gane like it's nothing, and even though he's definitely not pound for pound number 1 in the world, he's the best American fighter right now, and there's no doubts about it. Now that Demetrius Johnson is gone, and he's been gone for ages, and there's just not really any American right now that can really compare to John Jones, so I'm definitely going to have to put John Jones as the best American right now. I don't think there's any big questions that need to be asked. And for the worst, I've gone with Cody Durden. I mean, first reason he's in the flyweight division. You know, it's not a division that's super competitive. It's not like a really in-depth division. It's the flyweight division. I think he's barely ranked as well at number 14th. He's lost to Tagir Ulanbekov, who's also ranked. He's lost to Mohamed Makayev, and his best win is Jake Hadley or Charles Johnson, one of those. I'd say Charles Johnson's his best win, but those are his best wins. 2 guys that aren't doing amazingly in the unranked team of the flyweight division. He's 16-5, and he's taken on Bruno Silva, and if he is able to beat Bruno Silva, I might have to take him off this list. But as of right now, the fact that he's scraping the flyweight division has already lost to a ton of flyweights that are ranked. I'm going to have to say Cody Durden right now is the least impressive American that he's ranked and the worst ranked American fighter. But like I said, 90% of UFC fighters are from America, so you could have honestly put anyone as the worst fighter from America. And then Brazil, another really stacked country. The best, Alex Pereira. Pound for pound, I'd put him just behind Islam Makhachev as pound for pound number 2 right now. He's just insane. What this dude has accomplished in such a short amount of time is insane. Joined the UFC in 2021. He's been able to take the belt off Israel Adesanya when pretty much no other middleweight could. He's beaten Yuri Prochazka twice, both by finish. He beat Sean Strickland, which aged really well. He knocked out Jamal Hill, the second guy to finish Jamal Hill in the UFC as well. Beat Jan Blachowicz, won a belt in 2 different weight classes. He's still the champion, could even potentially fight for the belt in the heavyweight division. And he's done this within like 3 years. Alex Pereira, he's pound for pound one of the best in the entire world right now. He's only lost to Israel Adesanya, a guy that he's already beaten 3 times, once in MMA, 2 times in kickboxing. Undoubtedly, Alex Pereira is the best Brazilian fighter right now. And like I said, he could potentially, I know he's competing with Islam Makhachev, which is difficult, but if he racks together a few more wins and potentially wins a belt in a 3rd weight class for the first time ever, that'd be crazy. And you can't argue that if he does that, he might be pound for pound number 1. So Pereira is definitely the best Brazilian. And for the worst ranked Brazilian, I've got with Rodrigo Nascimento. He's just done nothing. This just shows how bad the heavyweight division is. This dude's best win, Dontel Mayes, and he's beaten him twice, and those are his best wins. Apart from that, he hasn't really beaten anyone notable. He just recently lost to Derek Lewis by KO, and to be fair, he was winning that fight, but you still got KO'd. He even lost to Chris Daukaus. He's 11-2. He's managed to become ranked because he's got at least 2 wins, and in the heavyweight division, as long as you're not on this massive losing streak, you just get ranked, so it's not really an impressive division. He's not even done great in the heavyweight division as well, so the worst ranked Brazilian is Rodrigo Nascimento. And then we have Australia/New Zealand. I've done /New Zealand because I know there's going to be that one dude in the comments, you know, with a nerd emoji trying to correct me when I say a fighter's from Australia and he's from New Zealand. So I've just combined them both together. And the best is Volkanovski. I know people are going to say Whittaker because if you look at their recent fights, Whittaker's on a 2-fight winning streak, Volkanovski's on a 2-fight losing streak, but man, it's Alexander Volkanovski. He's definitely still the best Australian in the world. Might not be the best featherweight in the world anymore, but when it comes to Australians, this dude is the best. 26-4. Arguably beat Makhachev the first time as well. And he's beaten, look at his resume as well, beating Max Holloway 3 times, the 3rd one being the most dominant as well. Jose Aldo, Korean Zombie, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. People forget just last year when he dominated Yair Rodriguez, Chad Mendes. He's just one of the best in the world, like not even just from Australia. He's definitely in my top 10 GOAT list. I would probably say he's up there with the greatest featherweights of all time. It's between him and Aldo, who he's already beaten before. And his only losses is to the current undefeated champion, Ilia Topuria, and pound for pound number 1, Islam Makhachev, one of them in which was a close fight. There's no doubting that Volkanovski's definitely the best Australian. Whittaker's definitely a number 2 spot. And for the worst, I've gone with Tatu Ivaza again. It's the heavyweight division. If you're in the heavyweight division, that definitely deducts you a few points. 15-7. He hasn't really got any good wins. Listen, I don't want to disrespect Tatu Ivaza. He's one of the funnest fat heavyweights out there, but when your best win is Derek Lewis, it's saying something, and he's just lost to so many people. Cyril Gane, Volkov, Pavlovich, fair enough, they're the best heavyweights, or some of the best heavyweights. Sergey Spivak, Junior Dos Santos, Marcin Tybura. He's lost to a lot more notable people than he's beaten. I mean, outside of Derek Lewis, who else is his most notable win if you really think about it? And he's on a 4-fight losing streak, all of them coming by way of finishing. It might get to the point where 2 more losses in this guy could be out the UFC. I love Tuivasa. I hope he gets a win. But as of right now, I'm going to have to say that he is the worst ranked Australian/New Zealand guy in the UFC. And then for Mexico, the best Mexican fighter I've gone for is Brandon Moreno, definitely between him and Yair Rodriguez. He's 21-8, a former champion. The 2 wins over Davison Figueiredo have aged really well because Figueiredo was still at one point one of the best flyweights in the world. He's beaten Brandon Royval, also lost to him, which we'll talk about in a second. Beat Kai Kara-France twice. He's just got a really good resume as of right now. Nothing crazy. It's nothing like compared to Pantoja, but he's still got a really good resume right now in the flyweight division. And then his notable losses recently to Brandon Royval. Before that, I mean, he's lost to Pantoja, the current champion, 3 times. He has lost to Davison Figueiredo before, Sergio Pettis. So he's not really had the most consistent flyweight career. It kind of seems like whenever he gets a win, he then loses as well. But if you compare him to the rest of the Mexicans, I mean, like I said, former champion. He's not on this massive losing streak. He's only lost to Pantoja in a close fight and to Brandon Royval, another close fight. So I'm going to say Brandon Moreno's the best Mexican. And the worst, I'm going Alex Perez. This dude might be the most inconsistent and cursed flyweight in the world. I mean, look at his Tapology record and the amount of fights that he's pulled out. I'm not saying they're all his fault, but the amount of cancelled fights this dude has is crazy. His best win is Nicolau that he won this year. Outside of that, he's lost to Pantoja. He lost to Davison Figueiredo. He lost to Benavidez. He lost to Mohamed Makayev. And I know he was an injury loss as well, but he did lose to Tatsuro Taira recently as well. And he still managed to become ranked. And I'm going to have to say that Alex Perez is the worst ranked Mexican right now in the UFC. So, yeah, I'm going to Alex Perez is the worst. Moreno was the best. And then finally, Georgia. Georgia's kind of rose in these past few years in the UFC. I swear a few years ago there weren't really any major Georgian fighters, but now we've got a few. The best, it's got to be Ilia Topuria. Undefeated, and it looks like he's definitely one of the pound-for-pound best in the world. The only guy in the featherweight, well, only featherweight to beat Alexander Volkanovski, knocking him out as well. Beat Josh Emmett in a brutal 5-round fight. Demolished Bryce Mitchell. The fight where he just slept Jai Herbert. Destroyed, what's his name, Ryan Hall as well. This dude is he's just terminating everyone. He's one of the best champions in the UFC right now as well. Like I said, undefeated. And if this dude can beat Max Holloway as well, that's a crazy resume that this guy's put together in just a few fights in the UFC. So what am I on about? Ilia Topuria, definitely the best Georgian. And for the worst, I've gone with Roman Dolidze. He's just a mid guy in 2 mid divisions. I mean, that he just recently got a win over Anthony Smith, which I guess is fair enough, but Anthony Smith is the most inconsistent fighter in the UFC. And he also was able to beat Jack Hermansson, which kind of aged well considering what Hermansson did to Pyfer. But he got beaten pretty comfortably by Marvin Vettori, destroyed by Imavov. And he's just a mid-fighter in 2 mid-divisions. So for the worst Georgian fighter, I've gone with Roman Dolidze because realistically, who else is the worst? It's definitely not Merab. He's going to be fighting for a belt, so I've got to go with Dolidze for this one. But that is who, in my opinion, is the best and the worst-ranked fighter to come from all the major countries in the UFC. Like I said, I've only mentioned the ones that have multiple fighters in there. So let me know your thoughts on this list and if you would have changed anything around, if I missed out any major countries. But let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.